Back in my high school days, my friends and I had a special place where we used to hang out. It was this old baseball field behind the abandoned elementary school. We always thought that one day we'd show up and there would be construction workers tearing the place down, but that never happened. At least not during our childhood. We all assumed it was because our town was too poor, which was probably true, but it also was exactly a prime location for any kind of real estate investment. It was built along the edge of the woods, far from most of the town, practically in the middle of nowhere, just like the rest of our boring town. What made it fun for us was that no one else went there. People would sometimes break into the school and paint graffiti on the walls. Sure, and the police would show up occasionally, but they never went near the baseball field. It was a safe haven for our group of friends, and that really mattered because a lot of my friends didn't have good home lives, especially one of them, Tim. His mom would call the cops for whatever reason came to her mind that day, but when we were at the field, none of that could reach us. We used to spend long summer nights sitting across the rusty bleachers, smoking, talking about whatever nonsense came to mind. I loved that place. Honestly, we all did. But even before everything happened, there was one thing that always bothered me. The old lamp that somehow still worked. The city must have forgotten about it. It was one of those lights that glowed orange. And because it was the only light out there, we were always surrounded by it. It didn't illuminate much either. Whenever I got tired, I'd stare into the pitch black woods around us, thinking about how someone or something could be watching us without us ever noticing. It bothered me more than I like to admit, but eventually someone would tell a joke or distract me and I'd forget the thought. At least for a while, I still wonder how many times we were actually watched. I guess I'll never know. At the beginning of summer, one night, Johnny and I were heading to the field. I must have left before him because when I arrived, his car wasn't there. I decided to start without him and go to the field alone. That was something our group didn't like doing. Even though we all thought we were tough, walking through a small forest alone at night wasn't exactly our style. But I always enjoyed the thrill. I passed the school and crossed the woods until I reached the field. I waited about 10 more minutes, but he didn't show up, so I started smoking. Another 30 minutes passed, and still nothing. By then, the excitement was gone. I decided to walk back to my car. I ended up running, because something just didn't feel right. I texted him several times, but he never replied. I waited 10 more minutes in my car, then drove home. When I woke up, he still hadn't replied. I was a little annoyed, but I didn't think much of it until my mom later asked if I had seen Johnny recently. I called all our friends, but they knew exactly what I knew. The last time we saw him was 2 nights earlier at the field. A day passed, then another. Soon the whole town knew. Search parties started. My friends and I even joined some of them, but we never found him. No one did. To this day, his body was never found. At the time, I tried convincing myself that he just ran away. He was adventurous. He always talked about wanting to travel the world, how this town suffocated him. But deep down, I knew he wouldn't leave like that. He would have at least left a message for us. Maybe scribbled something on the bleachers where only we would find it. About a month later, I went back to the field. Alone this time. I was so angry at the world that I didn't care if animals came out of the woods and attacked me. But as soon as I reached the end of the forest path, I noticed people sitting on the bleachers. For a moment, I thought they were my friends. After all, we never saw anyone else out there before. But they weren't. I had never seen those people before in my life. 3 of them were sitting on the bleachers, completely still, like statues. But they weren't the ones who unsettled me. There was a 4th guy. He was dancing, jumping around. His happiness bothered me. It wasn't normal happiness. Back then I thought maybe he was high on something. Now I think he was insane. And the worst part was, he looked familiar. I couldn't place him. It was like seeing a stranger in a dream. You know you've seen him before, but you can't remember where. I couldn't handle it. The whole scene was too weird. I backed away quietly and as quickly as I could. Thankfully, none of them followed me. At least, I don't think they did. Back at my car, all I wanted to do was speed away. But I didn't follow my instinct. Instead, I drove around the school parking lot. In the back corner, I saw a car. I recognized the model immediately. It was the same kind Johnny drove. But the moment I saw it, its headlights turned on. I panicked and sped out of there. Throughout the rest of the summer, I couldn't get them out of my head. I told my friends, and they agreed it was weird, but they didn't think much of it. I even stopped going to the field because of them. One day in late July, I was missing Johnny more than usual. I decided to look through the yearbook for memories, and that's when I saw him. He was in the background of a sports team photo, a janitor. When I flipped the page, I knew it instantly. It was him. Same face, same hair. He was a dancing man. I couldn't believe it. I told all my friends, but they had no idea what we were supposed to do. Eventually, I went to the police. I'm sure they thought I was crazy, but they still looked into his background. At least that's what they told me. They found nothing. Even his social security number led to nothing. I tried searching myself, but I came up empty too. The man was a ghost. As summer neared its end, I went back to the field with some friends. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I looked into the deep woods, fear crept back into me. I missed the feeling that place used to give me, but I knew it was gone forever. It wasn't home anymore. One early morning near the end of summer, I was at Dunkin' Donuts. I was half awake when I saw him. The dancing man, the janitor. He looked exactly the same. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but the more I stared, the more certain I became. Then he saw me, and he smiled. He rushed out of the store. I ran after him, but one of his friends was waiting at the curb. He jumped in the car, and they sped off before I could reach them. But what terrified me more than anything else was the license plate. It was Johnny's. I knew it because he had a unique plate for POC 207. It was the same car I saw a month earlier. Then it hit me. That was Johnny's car. It had been repainted, which is why I didn't recognize it instantly. I should have noticed. I still blame myself for that. I never saw Johnny again, or the car. Today, everything is just a memory I wish I could forget. Rest in peace, Johnny. It was the summer of 2024, and my three friends, Jake, Sam, and Marcus, and I were desperate for a break from our training at the Kennedy Space Center. We had been drowning in rocket data for weeks. But as star-obsessed nerds, all we wanted was one clear night under an open sky. We studied light pollution maps in Google Earth until we found a remote clearing deep inside Tate's Forest Preserve, a swampy, abandoned stretch in the Florida Panhandle. The place was named after an old legend about sea. Tate, a settler who vanished in the swamp in the 1800s, supposedly cursed. We ignored that. Ghost stories were for kids. We just wanted the stars. Our safe spot was a cozy Airbnb cabin near Apalachicola, about 30 miles from the forest's edge. After work on Friday, we took my Tesla Model Y and Marcus's Mustang, loaded with blankets, snacks, and a telescope. No camping gear. We were sleeping in the cabin anyway. The 7-hour drive from the Space Center was exhausting. We arrived at the Airbnb late, tossed our bags inside, grabbed a quick bite, and headed back out. The final stretch into Tate's Hell was brutal. Narrow dirt roads twisting between thick pine trees and gloomy wetlands. The air heavy with the scent of cicadas, an occasional splash somewhere in the dark water. With no cell service, we used walkie-talkies to stay connected between cars, their static biting through the silence. Around 2 a.m., we arrived at the clearing, tired and jittery. The sky was breathtaking. The stars looked close enough to touch. We spread the blankets, set up the telescope, and settled in. 15 minutes later, Sam's voice crackled over the walkie from the Mustang. "Dude, do you see those headlights?" A knot tightened in my stomach. We turned. A faint light crawled along the road we came from, 40 miles from the nearest town, at 2 in the morning, in the middle of a massive forest. No one should be here. Whoever it was wasn't good news. Jake, sitting with me in the Tesla, grabbed his radio. Turn on the headlights. Let's see what they do. I flashed the Tesla's headlights. 3 sharp bursts. A rusty, battered old pickup truck rolled to a stop about 100 yards away. No honk, no wave, nothing. Then we saw them, figures stepping out. 2, maybe 3. Hard to make out in the glare. They just stood there, staring. And then we heard it. Soft, low, distorted murmurs drifting across the swamp. Whispers we couldn't make sense of. This is bad. Marcus yelled over the radio. Sam sounded panicked. Those sounds. Nobody's out here at 2 a.m. for anything good. I waved my flashlight, but its beam barely cut through the shadows. The whispers continued. Thin, sinister, crawling under the skin. Jake tried to stay calm. Probably locals. Let's just move. We agreed over the walkies to find another spot and made a rule. If those lights showed up again, we'd sprint straight back to the Airbnb. We veered off the main road. Anyone following us now was doing it on purpose. We sped a mile down a side path and found another clearing. Just blankets and tension. 5 minutes later, Marcus's voice cut through the radio. Urgent. They're back. My heart slammed inside my chest. The same headlights carved through the darkness. Closer now. Then the engine revved loud. A deliberate, threatening roar. Sam shouted, "Get us out of here." We scrambled into the cars. Jake and I in the Tesla, Marcus and Sam in the Mustang. I floored it. The Tesla bounced over roots, branches scraping underneath like claws. The headlights behind us stuck to our tail, their high beams blinding me in the rear view. Jake was shouting into the walkie, "Marcus, you good?" Barely, they're right there. 4 young trainees, helpless, 40 miles from safety, in some place literally called Tate's Hell. You don't meet good people here at 2 a.m. I pushed the Tesla to its limits. Marcus close behind. The road twisted one way, and for a split second, the truck's lights vanished. I hoped we'd lost them, but they came back, closer, as if they were playing with us, as if they knew we had nowhere to run. We hit a fork in the path. I swerved left, praying it led to the main road. The truck followed. Finally, after minutes of panic, the dirt road shifted into pavement, and a faded highway sign appeared up ahead. I glanced back, expecting the headlights, but the darkness was empty. Marcus pulled the Mustang up beside us. We stopped on the roadside, gasping for breath, staring into the trees. The only sounds were the night insects and the soft crackle of the walkies. The drive back to the Airbnb was silent. We stumbled into the cabin and locked the door, but even that safe haven felt wrong after what happened. Who were they? We had theories. Illegal hunters, drug runners, or someone tied to the old legend of Tate's Hell. At 2 a.m. in a place like that, nobody comes out for fun. The way they watched us, the way they followed without rushing, it felt like they wanted us scared. We never went back. We don't talk about it. Not at the Space Center. Not anywhere. But when I drive alone through Florida's empty roads at night, I feel like some part of me is forever more alert, forever looking over my shoulder, asterisk, asterisk. In December 2023, I spent a 3-week vacation in Japan. My family owns a hotel near the small mountain town of Kaga Onsen in western Japan. It was a large traditional ryokan built on a hillside beside the Daishoji River. The area around the hotel had been inhabited for at least 2,000 years, and it was considered sacred. My father once told me that during the hotel's construction, the builders discovered 2 ancient stone blocks and pillars at the site. It seemed that some sort of shrine had stood there around the 9th century. The last time I stayed at that hotel was more than 15 years ago, so I was eager to relive the experience. I also love exploring, and remember my father's story. I decided to take a hike into the forest below the hotel, hoping to find traces of the old ruins he mentioned. As soon as I reached nearby Kanazawa City, I rented a car from an agency next to the train station and drove to the hotel. The snow was falling heavily, and traffic was terrible. The drive that should have taken an hour became 2. I arrived around 8 a.m. and let myself inside. The hotel was almost empty in December. Tourists rarely visit that part of Japan in winter. There were no staff members anywhere. I realized I was the only person in the entire building. It felt strangely unsettling to be alone inside such a huge structure in the middle of an isolated place. I grabbed one of the keys behind the counter, entered one of the suites, and stayed the night. The next day, I went into the forest below the hotel. The snow was deep, up to my ankles, and walking on uneven ground in my boots was torture. I must have walked quite far enough to lose my sense of direction. I checked my phone, no signal at all. I had been walking for about an hour, completely unsure where I was. I was surrounded by trees in every direction, and directly in front of me was a large hill. I figured climbing it might help me get a better vantage point. The ascent was incredibly difficult. The slope was steep and rocky, but on my left, I noticed what looked like the remains of a path. I slowly approached it. It was a winding dirt trail heading toward the top. It was partially blocked by dead branches, but I eventually reached the summit. Then I realized the path simply ended. It stopped abruptly. Looking around, I spotted a small hollow in the hillside above the path, hidden among plants about 5 meters away. I climbed up and found myself standing before the entrance of a small cave. Some mud had seeped inside, but the opening was wide enough for me to squeeze through. I had a small flashlight with me, so I shone it inside. I saw a small chamber directly ahead, and another narrow opening to the left. The moment I stepped inside, a strange smell washed over me. I can't describe it exactly. Something like the scent of an animal enclosure at a zoo. The small chamber ahead was empty except for a large rectangular stone block placed in its center. As I ventured deeper into the cave, I reached a much larger stone chamber. 2 side tunnels branched off from it, though I didn't explore them. There was another rectangular stone block on the far end of the chamber, this one hollow. I moved closer. To my shock, I saw human bones inside the hollow block. Around them were a long steel piece and several old bronze coins, the kind with a square hole in the middle. I stood there in a trance of disbelief. I reached out and picked up on the coins. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. The coin was ancient and eroded, but some markings were still visible. Before I could inspect it further, a loud crashing noise echoed from deep inside one of the side tunnels. I immediately pointed my flashlight toward the sound. The foul smell grew stronger, thick enough to make the air feel toxic. For some reason, I grabbed a long steel piece lying among the bones, holding in one hand like a weapon. Under the flashlight beam, it looked like the remains of a long blade. I began backing toward the entrance, but the smell changed. This time, I smelled smoke beneath the stench. Then I heard it, rhythmic beats coming from the depths of the tunnel, like someone striking a drum. That was when I completely lost it. I bolted out of the cave and toward the opening. As I ran, I swear the entire cave shook beneath my feet. I leaped from the entrance onto the slope and crashed onto the snow-covered ground. I dropped the blade but didn't dare pick it up. I kept running down the hill, crashing through dead branches. I ran and ran until I heard the faint sound of a passing car. Eventually, I stumbled out onto a roadside. I collapsed onto the ground in relief. I managed to flag down a passing driver. He hesitated at first, but let me in after seeing how shaken I was. During a short conversation, I learned I had wandered far, about 4 miles from the hotel. Eventually, I made it back. I hurried to my room, packed my bags, and drove away. I didn't feel safe being the only person in that hotel. I returned to Kanazawa and stayed there for the night. But there is more to this story. When the hotel reopened in February, I received a text from my father. He said someone had broken into the hotel through one of the first floor windows. Surprisingly, nothing was damaged or stolen, except for the door of my room. It had been smashed apart by a sharp metal tool. I don't know if it's connected to what happened in that cave, but I know one thing. I am never staying in that hotel again. ****.